Good afternoon, Winterview is back again with another brief dialogue of his dear friend Annastacey. Once again, X is driving along the road home from work on this fine sunny afternoon. So apologies as usual for the audio artifacts in the background, the revving engine, the screaming pedestrians, the chickens flying out of the way, the cart of watermelons being exploded as I drive through them, and so on and so forth. On a bumpy road, you can probably hear the car bumping, rattling. So this brief dialogue is on spiritual practice, the broad idea that I can do something to improve my spirituality, whatever that is. Well, that's the natural starting point. What is spirituality? Let's give it a definition, otherwise we won't know where to start. What will I talk about? You could say that everyday, ordinary reality is the realm of the known physical universe, or the known physics about our space-time world. And at the outer reaches of the spectrum of our known world, there's the realm where we don't really know, the sort of unknown or even unknowable. There's a very common belief, not only amongst mainstream scientists, but even individuals who have what we might call committed spiritual beliefs, that there are forces or powers unseen outside of the realm of human awareness that in some way govern, dictate, etc., the physical world. And within that world, of course, these forces act upon us, directly or indirectly, to influence our lives. You could say that this is the spiritual realm, but there are forces unseen that act upon us every day that certainly wouldn't be qualified as spiritual. For example, we know there's solar radiation. But to be fair, solar radiation is probably something we can measure and does represent the known world. But what about the unknown? Well, in psychology, we have things that we call beliefs. We talk about beliefs all day, every day, but I don't think I've ever seen one, to be frank, even though I work with them every day. So that is something that I presume exists somewhere in the psyche, again, something I've never seen. In the unconscious, again, ditto, not seen it yet. But when we presume its existence and use it as a model, it seems to work rather well, which is handy. And we get away with it in psychology, even though the hard scientists kind of look down their nose at us and make sniffy comments. But then, in the outer realms of psychology, moving in perhaps to philosophy or theology, what about so-called entities, angels, demons, gods, goddesses, pixies, fairies, and the like? Where do they fit in? Well, again, it comes back to the forces that act upon us. The idea that something outside of the known, measurable world that we live in has some influence upon us. This is difficult territory, because sometimes you can measure an effect of a presumed force and see that the effect is true in the measurable realm, and therefore you might hypothesize that your unseen force is real or valid. but you still can't see it or experience it directly. But why then do we get so defensive and sniffy and weird about the idea of demons and angels and gods and goddesses and so forth? It seems perhaps that they're just harder to swallow for the average rational person. Just the fact that not only do we not see or experience them directly, at least most of us don't, that the so-called benefits or effects of their influence are hard to determine. You could have a run of bad luck in your life, and you could suggest to yourself that you have a curse, that this curse imbues the power of negative or bad luck. Or you could even suggest there is a demon that is attached somehow to your life and is influencing your life in a negative way. So you either have to rid yourself of the demon or employ the services of a more powerful, beneficent creature such as an angel to set that right for you. But again, how do we know? How is it known that this exists? There are individuals, of course, who claim actual direct perceptual experience of such creatures, such entities. Are we to believe them or disbelieve them? Just because we might not have had that direct experience, can we safely shrug it off for all humanity? Because I don't see it, therefore no one can. Are we that egocentric? But again, back to the core question, and that is not so much is there a bunch of gods or demons and devils and so forth, but is there something unseen that we can employ, cajole, manipulate, ask, beg, etc., pray to improve the physical, our physical existence? Can we shift a unseen force in our favor? And this particular question is very pertinent in the Enlightenment non-dual arena, where it is very commonly believed that there is some kind of energy that perhaps is in the body or in and around the universe that controls and directs people. You might call this God or universal intelligence or divine light. I don't know. There's so many different ways of conceptualizing it. And in some way, the seeker who wants to get enlightened presumes naturally that if the unseen forces do indeed control, or govern, dictate, and so on and so forth, the linear time world, then it makes complete sense to somehow manipulate the unseen to achieve what you want for yourself. But the entire endeavor, no matter what the purpose of manipulating unseen forces, the entire endeavor rests on some whopping great presumptions, not least of which that there is a person who can do the action and secondly benefit from the action. I presume, for example, that because I'm a person who believes in the angel of wealth, for example, whatever that is, that if I pray to the angel of wealth will exert some power, I don't know what, on my life, that I will receive financial gain, some windfall. And again, to whom gets the windfall? The person, the individual gets the windfall. So there's the dilemma right there, the entire crux. If there is a person, irrespective of the beliefs in the spiritual realm, then that is the person who should in fact receive the benefit, you might say. So enlightenment, what is it? what is it? This is the confusion. It's often imagined. This is just a very broad strokes sketch. It's imagined that I, this person, is somehow not seeing reality clearly. I'm not seeing life as it really is. And enlightenment will be an unfolding of perception so that I see things as they really are. And when I see things as they really are, I will experience some kind of peace, some deep, relaxing, letting go kind of peace, where it's, oh, okay, now I see, that kind of thing. But that is it's a complete and utter misunderstanding of enlightenment. It's the mind framing it in a particular way. Notice that when you can define enlightenment or liberation, you're believing wholeheartedly in your definition. You're saying that, yes, this definition of enlightenment is 100% correct. And furthermore, my definition of, or my model of the world is 100% correct. Therefore, I have complete confidence that these techniques that I'm using are valid. That's the presumption. And not only are they valid, let's finish this off, they will achieve the exact goal that I imagine that they will achieve. The individual, therefore, fails to conceptualize the non-individual, or I could say it the other way, the mind which is conceptualizing the existence of an individual to whom can achieve certain attributes by certain practices, it's impossible for it to see otherwise. The mind can't conceptualize otherwise. So it's no use even for me to refute it and say it's silly or foolish or the mind is daft for doing that. That's naive on my part to do that. The mind is doing beautifully what it is designed to do, or the only thing that it can do. And the only thing that it can do in this context is imagine a person to whom life happens, a person who lives in a world where stuff happens to them. That's the only thing that the mind can imagine. And when it hears about enlightenment, it naturally does what the mind does with any other endeavor. It seeks to achieve it or get it or acquire it somehow. And maybe it becomes sophisticated and clever and decides, no, I'm not going to achieve it. I'm going to rid myself of stuff to reveal it. Or maybe I will sit in a context where its arrival is more likely. It gets very sophisticated, very clever, but ultimately it's all the same. It's how can I get it? How can I get this? Maybe I should meditate. What I've seen, what I've noticed is that individuals claiming enlightenment seem very relaxed. They seem very chilled out. They report that their mind is still. So if I do the same, still my mind, then I will achieve the same effect, goes the reasoning. But where do you draw the line? Because, for example, what if they have grey hair? Do I need to have grey hair? What if they're a male or a female? Do I need to change my gender to match them? What if they eat a certain diet? What if they drive a certain car, wear a certain brand of clothes, live in a certain neighborhood, and so on and so forth? And suddenly you realize there's so many things that I could attribute to their apparent enlightenment that I get a bit muddled, very quickly in fact. So I just choose what seems to be the most logical. Must be something to do with their still mind, or their sort of chilled out attitude. That's what it must be. So I'll do something similar. And the mind is very clever, Very clever. It kind of knows that perhaps the brand of car and the clothes are unrelated, because that just sounds silly to the mind. But the mind fantasizes about what it thinks of as spiritual types of stuff. So anything that sounds spiritual to the mind, at least, it goes for it. So energies, anything to do with energies, anything to do with chakras and energies, perhaps diet, definitely meditation, top of the list perhaps, mantras. What about reciting a mantra? What about sitting in a holy place with a holy person, in a holy position? Something like that. What if the idea of enlightenment is reward? Some kind of reward. It's a reward for a way of being in the world. If I can be charitable, perhaps, that might appeal. And that might appeal to a mind that is used to pleasing parents to get an ice cream, that kind of thing. So the mind will frame the approach or the endeavour in a sort of unique way to the individual, but it will keep in mind a sort of cleverness about it. As I said, it will obviously not go for brand of clothes, supermarket where the enlightened people shop, etc. We'll keep it in a sort of vaguely spiritual way, but remembering at all times the mind has to define spirituality in a particular way in order to follow it. And what the mind is in a sense tapping into is a very sort of exciting, unseen realm that can have manifest differences in one's experience. Like if you meditate and eat a vegetarian diet and do a lot more relaxing and be a bit more chilled out, you will experience a different quality of life than if you weren't doing that. And the change in the quality of life excites the mind in some way. It gets very, get a sense of I'm on my way spiritually somehow. You could be a very aggressive, difficult to please, a kind of prickly, aggressive, annoying person who's sort of struggling through life. And then you have this epiphany about yourself, like, wow, I'm a bit of a dickhead, I've realized, and I'm going to now meditate and relax and be kinder to people. And suddenly the world seems to respond to that. People are being nicer to you, and perhaps you get a better job and money starts to flow, and you attribute it to this sort of spiritual shift that you had. And of course the changes are measurable. It's like, wow, I really have changed. I've really come a long way. But enlightenment is a whole different ballpark, a context that can't even be imagined. Can't even be imagined. Enlightenment is, in some ways, the very awakeness that I am, waking up to the awakeness itself, which is a really poor explanation, but trying to give a sense of the totally radically different context for enlightenment than space-time achievement for a person. This thing we call enlightenment hasn't the slightest interest in space-time world, in the thoughts, the beliefs, the attitudes, the opinions, anything, nothing. Least of all the person, which doesn't even exist. Doesn't even exist. So this is not a dialogue that says, don't be spiritual, don't do any spiritual searching, don't do any spiritual techniques. This is a dialogue which says that is natural for the mind when it hears this communication about liberation. It's natural for the mind to do that. So if you find yourself existing as a person in a body, in a world, engaging in those activities, you know exactly what is going on. That is a natural expression, natural functioning of mind for the apparent person. Anyway, that's enough jibber jabber for this evening. Probably time to chillax and enjoy the rest of the drive in the warm afternoon sunshine and surrounded by beautiful trees and fields. Once again, thank you for listening, and as usual, your comments are welcome.